The double murder case of Nick Reiner, accused of the brutal slayings of his parents, the iconic director Rob Reiner and artist Michele Reiner, has transcended the boundaries of a typical celebrity scandal to become a profound examination of the American legal system's harshest realities. On January 7, 2026, the case experienced a seismic shift that stunned legal observers and laymen alike. Alan Jackson, a defense attorney of such high caliber that his name alone usually signals a fight to the death, walked into the Clara Shortridge Foltz Criminal Justice Center and 10 minutes later, walked away from the case forever. His exit was abrupt, shrouded in the cryptic language of legal ethics, and it left a massive vacuum in the defense of a man facing the death penalty. But as the dust settles on that shock announcement, a darker, more pragmatic truth is emerging from the shadows. This wasn't just about ethics. It wasn't just about a disagreement on strategy. According to legal analysts and insiders, the collapse of Nick Reiner's dream team defense comes down to the one thing that supposedly separates the Hollywood elite from the rest of the world: money. Specifically, the lack of it. It appears that the very crime Nick Reiner is accused of committing has triggered a legal failsafe, a Slayer Statute, that has severed him from his family's immense fortune, leaving him destitute and unable to pay the multi-million-dollar ransom required to save his own life. At the same time, a heartbreaking counter-narrative is rising from the victim's other children. Jake and Romy Reiner, in a display of unimaginable grace and complexity, have broken their silence not to condemn their brother as a monster, but to plead for justice for a seriously ill man, creating a moral deadlock that the courts must now resolve. Today, we are going to unravel the financial ruin of Nick Reiner, the strategic brilliance of his new public defender, Kimberly Greene, and the heartbreaking path that lies ahead in a trial that will pit the letter of the law against the shattered remnants of a family's love. To truly comprehend the magnitude of what happened in that downtown courtroom, we must first strip away the celebrity veneer and look at the cold, hard mechanics of capital defense. When Nick Reiner was arrested in December, the assumption was that money would be no object. His father, Rob Reiner, was the creative force behind some of the most successful films in history, from The Princess Bride to When Harry Met Sally and A Few Good Men. The family estate is estimated to be worth hundreds of millions of dollars. And the American justice system, wealth usually equals a very specific kind of justice, the kind that can buy reasonable doubt. You hire the best lawyers, you hire the best experts, and you grind the prosecution down until they offer a deal. Hiring Alan Jackson was the first step in that playbook. Jackson is a former prosecutor who became the star of the defense bar. He is the man who secured an acquittal for Kevin Spacey in London. He is the man who has been fighting tooth and nail for Karen Reed in Massachusetts. He is not a lawyer you hire to plead guilty. He is a lawyer you hire to win. So when Jackson stood before Judge Teresa McGonigal and uttered the words, "We feel we have no choice but to withdraw," it was an earthquake. Lawyers of his stature do not quit high-profile cases because they are difficult. They do not quit because the evidence is bad. They quit when the foundation of the representation collapses. And in this case, all signs point to the financial foundation crumbling beneath them. Legal analyst Jesse Weber of News Nation was among the first to voice what many were whispering: failed compensation. It is a polite legal euphemism for the client is broke. But how can the son of Rob Reiner be broke? This is where the tragedy of the crime meets the brutality of probate law. California has a law known as Probate Code Section 250, but in law schools and courthouses, it is known by a more biblical name: the Slayer Statute. The principle is ancient and simple. You cannot profit from your own wrong. The law states that a person who feloniously and intentionally kills a decedent is not entitled to any property, interest, or benefit under the will or the trust. While Nick Reiner has not yet been convicted, the mere charge of murder is often enough for the trustees of the family estate, likely independent financial advisors, or perhaps even his own siblings, to freeze any distributions. If Nick was relying on his parents' money to pay for the lawyer defending him for killing them, that tap has been turned off. The estate is on lockdown. The trustees have a fiduciary duty to protect the assets for the remaining beneficiaries, Jake and Romy. They cannot simply hand over millions of dollars to the accused murderer, even if he is a family member, because if he is convicted, he was never entitled to that money in the first place. This puts Nick Reiner in a paradoxical nightmare. He is the heir to a fortune, but he cannot touch a dime of it to defend himself. And make no mistake, the defense he needs is catastrophically expensive. We are not talking about a standard retainer. A double capital murder trial with special circumstances is the most complex legal proceeding in the American justice system. To defend a case like this properly, a private attorney needs a war chest. Let's break down the costs that Alan Jackson likely presented to Nick Reiner, costs that Nick could not meet. First, there is the attorney's fee. For a case that could last 2 years, involve thousands of hours of work, and require the full attention of a boutique firm's senior partners, the legal fees alone could easily exceed $2 to $3 million. But that is just the start. The real cost lies in the experts. Nick Reiner's defense will almost certainly hinge on his mental health. You cannot just stand up in court and say, "He has schizophrenia." You have to prove it. And you have to prove that it legally incapacitated him at the exact moment of the crime. To do this, the defense needs a forensic psychiatrist. Not just any psychiatrist, but a board-certified, court-tested expert who can withstand a brutal cross-examination by the district attorney. These experts charge anywhere from $500 to $1,000 an hour. They need to interview the client for dozens of hours. They need to review 20 years of medical records. They need to write a comprehensive report. That single expert could cost $100,000. Then, you need a neuropsychologist to conduct testing for both organic brain damage, another $50,000. You need a pharmacologist to explain the interactions of whatever medications or narcotics were in his system. You need a crime scene reconstructionist to challenge the physical evidence. You need a mitigation specialist, a person whose entire job is to dig into the defendant's childhood trauma to give the jury a reason to spare his life during the penalty phase. And in a high-profile case like this, you need a jury consultant to help pick 12 people who won't be biased by the sheer fame of the victims. When you add it all up, the expenses line item on the defense budget is massive. If the Reiner estate is frozen, and Nick Reiner has no personal wealth independent of his parents, which reports suggest he does not, given his history of addiction and homelessness, then he is financially defenseless. Alan Jackson, for all his skill, runs a business. He cannot ethically or practically float a multi-million-dollar defense out of his own pocket if the funding isn't there, the representation ends. It is a harsh reality, but it is the reality of the private bar. The failed compensation theory explains the abruptness of the withdrawal perfectly. It wasn't a moral objection to the crime defense attorneys represent murderers every day. It was a realization that the resources necessary to fight this battle were simply not there. This financial collapse brings us to the second, and perhaps more poignant aspect of this new chapter: the reaction of the family. In the void left by the lawyers, the voices of Jake and Romy Reiner have emerged. Their statement is a masterclass in pain and nuance. Usually, in cases of patricide and matricide, the surviving siblings become the prosecution's greatest assets. They sit in the front row, glaring at the defendant, giving victim impact statements that demand the ultimate punishment. But the Reiner siblings are doing something different. They are seeking justice for a seriously ill brother. This specific phrasing, seriously ill, is a legal and emotional bombshell. It signals that they do not view Nick as a cold-blooded killer, but as a casualty of a disease. It confirms the whispers that have circulated since the arrest, that Nick Reiner had been suffering from severe mental health issues, reportedly schizophrenia, for years. By framing him as ill, the siblings are implicitly rejecting the narrative of malice and embracing the narrative of tragedy. They are mourning their parents, but they are terrified for their brother. This puts them in a direct, albeit quiet, conflict with Los Angeles District Attorney Nathan Hochman. Hochman is a newly elected DA who ran on a platform of reversing the progressive policies of his predecessor. He has reinstated the death penalty as an option in Los Angeles. He has spoken about holding criminals accountable. But the death penalty is, at its core, a tool of retribution. It is designed to provide closure to the victims' families if the victims' families are telling the state, "We do not want him killed, we want him treated." The moral justification for capital punishment evaporates. It is incredibly difficult for a prosecutor to look a jury in the eye and ask for death when the people sitting in the victim's box are asking for mercy. The siblings' stance suggests they may be hoping for a verdict of not guilty by reason of insanity, NGRI. But achieving this verdict is much harder than the public realizes. And this is where the new defense lawyer, Kimberly Greene, becomes the most important person in Nick Reiner's life. With Alan Jackson gone, the court appointed the public defender's office. To the uninitiated, this looks like a disaster for Nick. We are conditioned by TV shows to think of public defenders as harried, incompetent lawyers who beg for plea deals, but in the Los Angeles Superior Court, specifically in the capital case unit, the reality is the opposite. Kimberly Greene is a specialist. She is part of an elite cadre of state-funded lawyers who do nothing but handle the worst of the worst cases. Unlike private attorneys who might handle a capital case once every few years, Greene lives in this world. And critically, she has something Alan Jackson did not have: the unlimited checkbook of the state of California. This is the irony of the indigent defense. Because Nick is now legally broke, the state must pay for his defense. And because it is a capital case, the state cannot skimp. When Kimberly Greene realizes she needs that forensic psychiatrist, or that brain scan, or that mitigation specialist, she files a funding request with the court. Judges almost always grant these requests in death penalty cases to avoid an appeal later on the grounds of ineffective assistance of counsel. So, while Nick lost the celebrity lawyer, he gained access to a vast state-funded apparatus of experts that will now be deployed to prove his insanity. Kimberly Greene does not have to worry about the Reiner estate trustees. She does not have to worry about a bounced check. She just has to do the work. And the work will be grueling. The defense she likely has to mount the insanity defense is a legal minefield. In California, it is governed by the Monogton rule. It is not enough to prove Nick has schizophrenia. It is not enough to prove he was hearing voices. Greene must prove that. At the time, he allegedly stabbed his parents. His mental disease was so overwhelming that he was strictly incapable of understanding the nature of his act. Or, and this is the key, he could not distinguish between right and wrong. This is a very high bar. The prosecution, led by Hochman's team, has powerful evidence to the contrary. They will point to the fact that Nick Reiner fled the scene. He left the house, traveled to Santa Monica, and checked into a hotel. Prosecutors love flight evidence. They will argue, if he didn't know what he was doing was wrong, why did he run? Why did he hide? Crazy people don't cover their tracks. Guilty people do. They will argue that the argument at Conan O'Brien's party the night before provides a motive: anger, resentment, jealousy that is rooted in reality, not delusion. Greene's job will be to deconstruct that timeline. She will have to show that his flight was not a rational attempt to escape, but the disorganized wandering of a mind in chaos. She will have to explain the argument at the party not as a motive, but as a symptom, a manifestation of his paranoia and decompensation. This is where the siblings' testimony will be critical. If Jake and Romy testify that Nick had been spiraling for months, that his behavior at the party was erratic and delusional, they become the defense's star witnesses. They can provide the context that strips the intent out of the murder charge. The legal process is now bifurcated. If Greene pursues the NGRI plea, the trial will happen in 2 phases. Phase 1 is the guilt phase. The jury decides, did he kill them? Given the physical evidence and the arrest, this phase might be short. The defense might not even contest that he did it. The real battle is phase 2, the sanity phase. The same jury hears evidence solely about his mental state. If they find him sane, he goes to prison for life, or potentially death. If they find him insane, he is acquitted of the crime, but committed to a state psychiatric hospital, likely for the rest of his life, until he is deemed no longer a danger, which, in a double murder case, essentially means forever. This is likely the justice the siblings are seeking. A state hospital is not a walk in the park. It is a high-security facility. But it is a hospital. It is a place where he would be medicated and treated, not punished. It acknowledges that the Nick Reiner who committed these acts was not the brother they knew, but a stranger created by untreated illness. The road to February 23rd. The new arraignment date is now paved with these complex evaluations. Kimberly Greene will spend the next 6 weeks in the jails, sitting across from Nick Reiner, trying to build a bridge into his reality. She will be reading thousands of pages of discovery. She will be looking for the competency red flag. Before they even get to trial, she might declare a doubt as to his competency under Penal Code 1368. This asks a different question. Is he sane enough right now to understand what is happening? If the answer is no, the criminal proceedings stop. He goes to a hospital immediately to be restored to competency with medication. Only when he is lucid can the trial for his life begin. Given his reported appearance in court shaved head, prison jumpsuit, monosyllabic answers, this competency motion is a very real possibility. The withdrawal of Alan Jackson was a shock, but it cleared the fog. It revealed the case for what it truly is, not a celebrity whodunit, but a tragic intersection of mental illness, family devastation, and the brutal mechanics of the legal system. The glamour is gone. What is left is a broken family, a broke defendant, and a dedicated public defender tasked with saving a man from the death chamber. As we watch this unfold, we must remember that this is more than a news story. It is a cautionary tale about the limits of wealth and fame to protect us from the ravages of the mind. Rob Reiner spent his life telling stories about the human condition, about love and justice. Now, his children are living through a story darker than anything Hollywood could invent, forced to find a new definition of justice in a courtroom where no one truly wins. The hearing on February 23rd will be the next pivotal moment. Will Greene enter an NGRI plea? Will the DA announce he is seeking death despite the family's wishes? Or will the proceedings be halted entirely by a competency claim? We will be there to analyze every motion, every filing, and every word spoken in that courtroom. The story of Nick Reiner is no longer about who is representing him. It is about whether the system can accommodate a tragedy that does not fit neatly into the boxes of guilty or innocent. It is about whether we punish the act or treat the person. And for Jake and Romy Reiner, it is about salvaging the memory of their parents by showing mercy to the brother who took them away. This is a legal saga that will define the tenure of the new DA and test the conscience of Los Angeles. Stay tuned, because the real trial has only just begun.